Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video I'm going to be planting out some Morning Glories seeds. These are also known as ipomoea. These are quite nice tropical plant which has quite stunning flowers that go on for most of the summer. They're quite a large climber, so you do need a little bit of space for them. This is the plant that I've grown previously in Taiwan. I've not grown in the UK because I've never had anywhere warm enough. But I'm going to grow it here in my parents' polytunnel. So I'll just show you now where they're going to be growing. So I'm going to be growing them here in my parents' polytunnel. It's quite empty at the moment, it's still spring, so it's pretty empty, but it's just starting to warm up, so we've got lots of seeds starting to come on, and we should have a good crop of plants soon. So the place I'll be growing them is where my mother normally grows her sweet peas. So along this trellising here, we often grow sweet peas up the top. So if I go over to this side, we've already got some sweet peas planted. You can see at the bottom there. These normally grow up quite well each year. They like the extra warmth. They seem to do quite well, even though sweet peas also grow well in cooler climates. They seem to do quite well here in the polytunnel. And these most years get right up to the top, completely cover this section. And because the frosts normally kill them off in October, November, these ones keep going right into December, so it's nice to have some late flowers. And these also flower earlier than the ones in the garden because they grow much faster with the warmer temperatures. So I'll show you a picture now so you can see how covered in flowers they are normally each year. So because we want to grow a lot of the sweet peas elsewhere in the garden, and I would like to grow these Morning Glory for a change, we've got a space here which I could plant some. It looks pretty congested at the moment, there's not much space for planting. We've got some strawberries at the front there, and some strawberries actually on the inside. But in this crack down here, that's where we're planting the Morning Glory plants. What they'll do is I'll twine up, I'll put some more string in because they won't climb up well against the this here, because they're twining plants. They like to go up long straight poles or strings, and so I'll put more of them in there. I'll grow them up. Once I get to the top, I might grow them along the top. We'll see how much shade they cause. When I do grow them, I won't grow them back this way because this is where all our vegetable plants are. We don't want to shade out any of the vegetable plants. So what I'll be doing is I'll be growing them back over the section here. I can grow them along this pole here. Pull them along this support, hopefully. I might need to put in some extra strings if this support is touching too much onto the plastic and they can't wrap around it. And we'll see if we can get some up on these poles as well. It'll be nice to get a bit of colour and a bit of foliage in here. Also, it won't be casting any shade on anything because this is just like the working section where I have the potting bench with all the potting material and pots. We also have some sections here for growing seedlings and more sensitive seedlings in here as well, but this will be empty by the time late summer comes, and that's when the plant will be right over the top, so casting shade in this area shouldn't be a problem by then. So although we probably only need about 3 or 4 plants for the polytunnel here, I'm going to plant the whole packet of seeds because I quite like to put these elsewhere in the garden, see how they do here in Scotland. As I say, they are tropical plants, they don't normally do quite as well in the cooler climate here in Scotland, but it'll be interesting to see how they grow. I'm also going to plant some hopefully in my new house, so I've got a conservatory there. And until I get some more house plants, there's probably going to be quite a lot of space for some climbers on the wall. So I think this will look quite nice on the wall there. I can grow it over the summer and see how long it lasts. It'll probably die off in the winter. These are only annuals really, this variety of ipomoea. So it'll be interesting to see. And I say these are quite tropical, so they grow really fast if they've got the right environment. In a lot of countries, ipomoeas are nasty weeds that take over because they twine around other plants and they smother and kill other plants. But here in Scotland it's quite cold, so they don't grow too vigorously. It's not a big problem. I'll just have to keep an eye on them when they're in the polytunnel, make sure they're not taking over too much of the polytunnel and the other plants. And although they've got a big space to cover because they're tropical plants that grow quickly, and these tropical conditions here in the green tunnel and also my conservatory, I am expecting them to get really big by the end of summer. So I'll be planting them all, and I'll be planting them in the propagator because they're tropical plants, so they need some warmth to get going. I'll also be keeping them in the mini greenhouse within the polytunnel to keep them extra warm until we get some warmer weather. At the moment it's been dropping down to about 5 degrees every night in the polytunnel, so it's a little bit cold. It's still frosty outside, so until it warms up in April I'll be keeping them somewhere nice and warm. But once they get going and once they're in the ground, they should grow really fast and completely cover the whole area. So I'll just go ahead and sow them now. That's the seeds all sown. I'm going to put them in a nice warm environment, label up the tray so I know what's growing here, and I'll keep them somewhere nice and warm. Once they start to germinate, I'll put them in somewhere really sunny as well as warm. I'll give you guys an update, hopefully at the end of this video, and we'll see how they've germinated, see what success rate we've had with the germination, and it'll be good to see. They should be quite vigorous from the start because they're quite big seeds, so there's a lot of energy stored in the seed. This should be quite a burst of energy to begin with. And from my experience of growing these in Taiwan, they are quite spindly plants because they are climbers, so they should start spindling up and searching for light quite quickly. So with the pots so close together, I'm going to have to be careful that they don't all tangle into one massive mess. So I'm probably going to have to transplant these quite early on after they've germinated into individual pots. Otherwise they're just going to all tangle and crawl into each other, and I'm not going to be able to separate them. So it's now 11 days later and we've had pretty much 100% germination. I think the only one that hasn't germinated is this one down here. And we did have one that was very late, and that's only just appeared in the last couple of days. I'm not sure why that one took so long. But they're all looking quite good. A little bit of singeing on some of the leaves because they did get a little bit dry in some hot sunny weather, but they're generally looking quite healthy. So now it's time for me to pot them on before they start getting into the climbing phase. What tends to happen with these plants, and most climbers to be honest, it tends to have quite a stocky, strong stem until the seed leaves, and then after it starts growing the true leaves, which are the ones just after the seed leaves, which is these you can see just coming through here, it then starts to get much more leggier and starts to climb. So these will start climbing within a few days, and when that happens we're going to have problems because they're all going to tie together and there'll be a tangled mess. So in this video I'm going to be potting them up. Now the other thing with these is they've been in seed compost the whole time, so they've used up all the energy from their seed sources, and they're now getting their energy from the sun. But because they're in seed compost, there's no nutrition in that soil, so they're going to be quite slow at growing from now on. So I'm going to put them in a nice rich mix of compost, and that's going to make sure that they keep their continual strong growth. The mix I've got is a mixture of multi-purpose compost with a little bit of perlite to make sure it's nice and open. The multi-purpose compost I've used is very moisture retentive, and also it has a lot of feed in it, so it can be a bit strong, the feed, but I want something that's nice and strong because this plant is going to be really vigorous. It's a tropical plant, it will need a lot of feed to grow fast. I've added a tiny bit of loamy topsoil in here with a bit of sand. That's just to help it get a bit damper again when it gets too dry, because I find pure multi-purpose compost, once it's bone dry, it's really hard to get damp again. So if there's a little bit of loam in there, it really helps out. And I've also put a bit of perlite because the multi-purpose compost I'm using can get quite soggy when it's fully saturated, and I don't want the roots to rot off. So I just put a little bit of perlite in here, but these plants don't need particularly free draining soil as long as it doesn't get waterlogged. So that's why I've not gone for a lot of perlite, just a small amount, just enough to give a little bit of drainage. So I'm not putting these into big pots, partly because these are going to go in the soil pretty soon. I would like to put them in the soil now, but I'm not quite ready with the time of year. It's still a bit too cold, so I'm going to have to grow them somewhere sheltered for a little bit now. So I'm just going to be potting them into these pots here, which are 9 centimeter half pots. 9 centimeter pots normally slightly taller. These are still as wide as 9 centimeter, but just slightly smaller. So I'm just going to be teasing these out, potting them on. This will mean the plants will grow much better. They've got a nice rich compost mix to grow in, and it will give me more time to get the site prepared and for the weather to warm up before they're finally needed to be put out in their final position. So that's all the Morning Glory plants now completely planted up. So there's 25 of them in total that I've got to germinate, which is quite good. So 25 is certainly far too many for the polytunnel here. I was actually only going to plant probably about 4 or 5 of them here in the polytunnel. But it'll be interesting to see how well they do outside. Here in Scotland, it's a little bit cold normally for tropical climates such as this. But I'm going to look for some nice sunny positions in my parents' garden and in my garden. I'll plant some around and I'll see how they do. As I say, I'm not too hopeful because they are tropical and it is quite cold here in the summers. But I'm also hoping to grow one in the conservatory of mine, back in my own house. And that'll be good to see how that does in the conservatory. A nice, hot, humid environment. I suspect that will grow really large. And by the end of summer, it will be absolutely covered in flowers. So all I need to do now is give these a really good soak, put them in a warm position, keep them in the polytunnel until our weather warms up outside, and I should hopefully be able to plant some of these plants into the polytunnel, in the soil in the polytunnel, within the next 2 or 3 weeks, because at the moment I'm keeping them in a sheltered mini greenhouse within the polytunnel just to keep them a little bit warmer, because even at night time, even though the polytunnel gets nice and hot during the day and it does keep the frost off during the night, it is still a little bit cold for them in the night time. So I'll keep them somewhere sheltered within the polytunnel. Once our weather warms up and we don't have cold nights anymore, what I will do is I'll put them in the soil in the polytunnel in their final position. But as I say, there's only about 5 of them that need to be in here, so the rest of them I'll pot around in the garden probably kind of late May time when the weather's really nice and warm. and we'll see how they do. So that's all for this update, and I'll see you guys with an update on the Morning Glory plants in probably a few months' time.